Hey guys, welcome back to the Calibrate Tools channel. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's fine. Today we're gonna talk about tools, smart tools, because if you hadn't noticed, okay, if you frequent places like Home Depot, Lowe's, any hardware store or major big box retailer that deals in tools or home improvement equipment, you will notice over time they have evolved. They're not the same. They're not what they used to be. Okay. Now they have become, just like human beings, smarter, right? And with the rise of AI and automation and all of that, these tools are keeping pace in their own way with the new tech that's coming out. Okay, so we're just going to discuss in true form that's going to be more in sync or in line with the theme of this channel. We're going to talk about tools and how they become smarter over time to make your job a lot easier, and why this tech is so popular right now, why it's taking over. Okay, so let's dive into that. Okay, guys, let's see here. So at the end of the day, guys, it's all about power, precision, and intelligence. Okay, and you can actually attribute those same things to people, to nations, and how these things play out, right? And it's kind of those are principles I just mentioned. Those are not concrete things, right? Power, you can't touch power, you can't touch precision, you can't touch intelligence, but these are the invisible principles that run the world of physical things, right? Not just people or nations or businesses or or whatever. These are actually abstract principles, right? That run the world. It's almost like electricity, right? You can't see it, but it definitely shows up, right? And it can either hurt you or harm you. All right. So don't want to get off on a tangent on that, but I like every now and then my brain tends to make these inferences from something that's so mundane and boring to some people, like tools, to some people, not to me, but so I make these inferences to actually more abstract, wider principles that can apply universally. So excuse me for that. I do that every now and then. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about it. What's the smart tool revolution, and that what is that, and why is that going on? Okay. So like I said, if you haven't noticed, the tools that are in your grandfather's garage are not the same tools that you see in the in the hardware store, like a Home Depot's or Lowe's or something like that. They're very much different, right? They have the technology has advanced to the point now where even batteries are not what they used to be. Batteries are essentially computers right now that can actually tell if your motor in your power tool is getting too hot or not. It can actually monitor the voltage and other metrics, and that's kind of crazy, right? So in other words, they have microprocessing chips in them to monitor the different aspects of how your tool operates, and the battery platforms that they have. Okay, and you'll see how batteries have evolved over time along with the tools, and that's crazy. But that's where we are right now, and it's just a reflection of how technology is just pretty much usurped the old ways, and just transformed everything. So what's that going to do? That's going to influence how you actually fix things, how you repair things, how you build things. Okay, so it's not just the tool itself, it's how it's going to affect you as the operator when you're going out there into the world as a tradesman, as a DIYer, as a regular weekend warrior, or whatever. You have to stay up on this stuff. It's almost like you got to go to school again just to be a DIYer, or you got to go to school again just to be a tradesman. Of course, that's more expected. But when you walk into these big box retailers to get a tool, now you're not just picking up a regular tool. Even the hand tools, some of these hand tools have tech in them, right? So you almost have to really read the manual now in order to be able to operate it. And that's where I come in, because I am the tool tutor here, and that's Calibrate Tools is all about education. Remember that. Okay, so go ahead and hit that like and subscribe if you picking up what I'm putting down. All right, so let's see. Let's get into it. I've been rambling for 2-3 minutes now. You guys want to get into the meat and potatoes of what I'm talking about? Okay, So for most of the 20th century, tools were simple, right? And just think about it. If you go back to the caveman days, they had what? Think of those archaeological finds where tools were just like a sharp rock or something like that, and maybe a primitive hammer or something like that. And then it evolved over time, right? Because you got to remember, all tools are, like I say all the time, they're just an extension of the human body, and they're an extension of the human mind. So if you want to drive a nail into something, you're not going to use your hand. You're going to use a tool. So tools can do things that you can't. They're stronger and they can do it faster. Okay. So that's how I look at them. All right. Not just as some object. I look at them as an extension of the human body, extension of your hands or whatever to get something done. So they're actually, when you look at them symbolically, to me, they reflect the elevation, all right, or the advancement of the human mind in terms of innovation and creativity, if you get what I'm saying. Okay, so for most of the 20th century, a drill was a drill. A circular saw was just a motor with a blade and a trigger. Okay, a hand tool was a simple wrench or screwdriver or something like that. And then that hadn't changed for a long time, right? They were basic mechanical tools. You picked them up and you did what you had to do with them, and they worked, right? Then came the cordless revolution, right? All right, and that was back in the 70s, according to the research, the 70s and 80s. You had companies like Black & Decker, and they introduced, cordless drills, and the industry said, yeah, okay, good, okay. Now we don't need cords anymore, right? But even in those early cordless days, the tools were pretty much rudimentary. They were slow, they were weak, and the batteries died very quickly. Okay, they had what they called NiCad batteries. Okay, so that's nickel cadmium batteries back then, and they had they worked, but like I said, they were kind of on the primitive level. It kind of reminds me of, I've been in the trucking industry for a while, and I've driven all kinds of trucks, right? From let's see here, 48 footers, doubles, you name it. I've driven them, right? But I'd say about maybe 10 years or so back, I started driving what they call LNG, liquid natural gas trucks. Okay, they run on liquid natural gas, not regular diesel, right? And I had a very serious accident. It had nothing to do with the technology. It was a mechanical failure in the drive axle. Okay, something broke and it fell out in the middle of the freeway, and somebody ran into the back of me. That's the story for another day. But my point being is that those liquid natural gas trucks, they came out around that time when I was driving them, and what I think they were kind of the guinea pigs, right, of the trucking world back then, right? Liquid natural. You see them all over the place now, obviously. But what these industries do is they put out a certain amount of the new tech, right? In my case, it was the LNG truck that I drove, and they test it out. So and they see how the market likes it. They see how it works and everything, and then they fix all the bugs later, right? It's just like any kind of tech, like a computer program or something. They may sell you just to test it out, and then they fix the bugs as they go along. But they're going to sell it to you and make money that's the business model. Make money as they fix the bugs, right? So we see this trend in tech over time, right? If you look at a graph, you'll probably see the same pattern. When they put out a new type of technology, in this case, it would be back in the days when they put out cordless tools, Black & Decker, they put out the NiCad batteries, nickel cadmium ones, and they noticed that it wasn't the best, but they put it out there anyway, right? And I give kudos to that. If you got an idea, just put it out there, right? Somebody's gonna buy it, and if it has good potential, you just fix the bugs along the way. You use the income from what you've earned from people buying your guinea pig, and then you make it better and better and better. Right, just like this laptop, this Apple computer I'm on right now. You know, it's just an evolution of something that was more less technologically advanced before this version, right? So that's how they do it. They don't wait for it to be perfect. In other words, number one lesson: don't wait for anything to be perfect in your life. Go out there and put it out there anyway. Okay. So these NiCad batteries, they died very quickly, and even if you recharged it, it didn't last long, right? Maybe like 10 minutes or so. And so the industry basically, it basically hobbled along with these types of batteries for a while, for a long time. But then something happened, okay? Smart tools started kicking in, right? Lithium ion batteries, right? There's always some other tech that's coming behind the first one to, eventually take the old tech over. So it's kind of running a race, and that's the one in the fourth man in the back, just pacing himself until the one in the front runs out of breath. And that's basically what happens in tech, right? So when the old tech runs out of breath, that new tech steps up, steps up and grabs the baton or just passes them up. And that's what the lithium ion batteries did. Okay, so they came on the scene, right? Microchips, they had the microchips and everything that was small enough to put inside these tools. Bluetooth wireless and all that eventually came into play as well, and were integrated with these tools and with these batteries and everything. So that's when that happened, when the microchips happened, when the Bluetooth technology came on the scene. Everything changed overnight, basically. Okay, so right now, the battery revolution is up there, because you got to realize most major tool brands, whether it's Milwaukee, DeWalt, Ryobi, whoever, they have a battery platform. That's basically that's the platform for most of these tools, right? Having a battery platform basically changed the game. Let me show you right here. It's kind of dirty. Man, I don't know if you can see it, but this is like a platform, a Ryobi battery platform. Look, it holds about 6 of them. One's missing right now. I got 2 of these on deck. When I'm using my Ryobis. By the way, I don't always use Ryobi, and I got nothing against Ryobi. Ryobi made its own lane, right? It's you only need it. They know what they're there for. So don't knock Ryobi, okay? Because they do what they do well. And you just got to find your own lane and do what you do in that lane, okay? So yeah, the battery platforms basically, they're basically the ecosystem of any tool brand, right? So, so what I mean by that is, like I said, you got Milwaukee, DeWalt, Bosch, Ryobi. Every major tool brand has a platform that has a bunch of tools that can use just one type of battery. Okay, that's the magic about it, right? They can have all kinds of tools, but their battery platform is universal to their tool brand. Okay, and that's what I mean by platform. Okay, that's basically strategic when it comes to doing that, right? That's not just a convenience thing. That's a strategy thing. Okay, that's how the entire industry works. So if you're gonna buy a Milwaukee or Bosch brand, you gotta get their batteries, right? So it's about the dollar bill as well, right? So you got to get their battery platform if you want your tools to work. You can't get any other type of battery platform to work with their tools, and that's business, right? And nothing wrong with that. So now modern batteries, okay. Let's see here. What is it saying here? Milwaukee, DeWalt, FlexVault, Makita, XGT. They're not just cells in a plastic case anymore. They have onboard microprocessors. I mentioned that earlier. They monitor cell temperature in real time. They balance the load across the cells to maximize both power and lifespan. They communicate with the tool, okay, telling it how much juice is left, whether it's running too hot, and even adjusting power delivery based on the task. Imagine that. you know, back in the 70s when they came out with cordless tools and stuff like that, when they came out with the first batteries, they were nowhere near, okay, the level, on the level as the batteries are today. What I just described to you in this one battery, that's a computer, that's a data center, right? That's a data center in your hand, right? They're monitoring the tool, right? They know when to adjust the power delivery based on the task. So let's just say you got a circular saw and you're making a cross cut, you're right across that lumber, and that battery can say, okay, it can tell when you're forcing it, so it'll probably slow it down or decrease the power so it won't overheat and stall on you. That's what you call smart tools. Okay, that's I mean, give me a break. It's pretty self-explanatory once I laid it out to you right there. That's what's out there right now. Okay. It can tell whether, like I said, something's running too hot, how much juice is left in the battery. Well, they tell you that anyway. All you gotta do is look at the thing. But all this talk about balancing the load across the cells to maximize power and lifespan, man, and that's from a microprocessor chip in that battery. So it's basically a computer right there, right? That battery is a computer. So that's the platform, really. That's really where when you talk about tools, that's the real platform, okay? That's the brain. That's the brain of that tool. It's not just the tool itself. The battery is the brain. And that's where I think that the innovation is quite spectacular in that sense, where you have the main battery that can work for any tool in that brand, but it's also the brain of those tools in that whole brand. So you have to get that. And I think that was, it really makes sense, by the way, because why would you put the brain in each tool when you could just put it in the battery platform, right? Wouldn't it be cheaper just to put it in the battery platform, since you can use it with every tool, than to try to make every tool have their own processing chip? Not that these tools are not like computers themselves, but just putting them in the battery makes a whole lot more sense logistically and financially, economically, than putting them in each tool. So yeah, great. All right. So what else? All right. Let's see here. Where are we? Milwaukee's RedLink Intelligence, for example, lets the battery and the tool talk to each other 1,000 times per second. Okay, that's not just marketing. That's real-time feedback that's happening there between the battery and the tool. And that, of course, that prevents everything I just mentioned, overheating. It makes the battery last longer. It makes the tool last longer. Man, it's just what you call a perfect symbiotic relationship between the battery and the actual tool itself. Okay. And as far as amp hours, let's see here. What's it saying about amp hours? It says it went from a 1.5 amp hour battery to 2 to 4 to 6 to 9 to 12. Okay. Says DeWalt's FlexVolt Advantage system gives you the equivalent of a corded tool's power from a battery. Imagine that. A corded tools. You know, we love corded tools because they never run out of power because they're connected to the damn wall. Okay. But these batteries now, they give you the same amount of power. All right. They give you the same amount of power as a corded tool. So if you're a contractor and you've been carrying a bunch of extension cords, around all day long, like back in the days or whatever, you don't necessarily have to do that now if you have some of these modern smart batteries, right? With the amp hours up through the roof now compared to where it was before. Okay, so that's batteries, right? Hope you guys got an idea of how batteries have evolved. Let's talk about power tools, right? Let's see. It says smart power tools are no longer just motors with triggers. They are connected, sensor-loaded, data-generating machines. And this is where the things get wild, okay? Brushless motors, okay? Brushless has pretty much taken over the industry as well, compared to regular carbon brushes, right? That were the old style, okay? So so basically the carbon brushes, they were made to just die, right, over time because they got worn out, right? They had to be replaced, or you eventually had to replace the tool. I think I pointed out a carbon brush on one of the circular saws I have in here in one of my older videos. So you can probably check that out. I got a bunch of circular saw videos. I love circular saws. They're good to talk about. People love them. Yeah. So, but yeah, I remember breaking down the motor, and you can see the carbon brushes in there. And over time, like I said, they get worn out, just like shoes or anything else, because it's contacting, it's contacting the what is that? The armature or something? I forget. And then that creates heat and friction, and then it wears them down. Now, brushless motors, okay, they don't have to worry about that, right? They use sensors, right? They use what they call electronic commutation, and so they last longer. They're not touching anything, so that's obviously the tool's going to last longer, okay? And you're going to get more power. You're going to get less heat, and you're going to get a more efficient tool, right? So that's what brushless did for the industry. And so if you think about it, that eventually that was going to come about, right? That was going to come about eventually. And so if you go, I was in Home Depot the other day, and I was looking around. Most of the Milwaukee tools are brushless. The Hiltis and the more higher grade tools were brushless. Okay. Obviously brushless is more expensive. But guess what? If you amortize, if you want to use that term, if you want to amortize your savings over time, it makes sense, right? To have a brushless tool, because it lasts longer, you get more out of it. So that's why you pay for that. Right? But like I said, it evens out. All right. So it says the real leap, though, the real advancement is what they call connectivity. It says Milwaukee introduced what's called One Key. DeWalt launched Tool Connect. Hilti has On Track. These are platforms that let you track your tools via Bluetooth and GPS. You can lock them remotely if they're stolen. And here's, let's see here. You can customize the tool's performance from your phone. Torque limits, speed limits, LED settings. You can literally program a drill to max out at a specific torque, so your apprentice doesn't over tighten bolts and strip threads all day. That used to require training and supervision. Now it's a setting on an app. The thing about that what I just read there is I see the merit in that type of tech. It'll save your tool from an inexperienced novice, okay, from them destroying it or damaging it. But at the same time, as a novice, they still have to learn how to manipulate the tool, all right, properly. Okay. So yes, it's almost like AI, right? Like you can use AI for a lot of things, but the dark side of it is that some people say it can make you lazy. And I get that part, because your lack of critical thinking skills will start to happen, right? Because you say, oh man, I can just type something in there. I use AI, by the way. There's nothing wrong with it. I use it just like everybody else. But most of the time when I use it as a reference tool, not necessarily to take over my own thought processes. There's a beauty to really, sitting down and actually thinking about something in depth, right? And igniting your own creative juices. There's merit to that. So if you become too dependent on certain types of tech, yes, it's great that this type of tech is out there, but you have to understand too, you don't want it to make you too reliant on it, right? You don't want it to do the thinking for you, or in this case, the apprentice. All they have to do is go on an app, and the thing will stop the apprentice from doing it. The apprentice still has to learn how to stop himself, right? Has to learn how to handle that tool, manipulate it properly, right? And that's all part of becoming a great craftsman, a great tradesman, a great DIYer, or anybody that uses tools. You still want to know how to handle it. And even with all this tech, this smart stuff, you don't want to be a slave to it, right? Okay, so what? Because what if it malfunctions? Then would you know how to use the tool still? No, because sometimes you may have to go back to the basics and go in your grandfather's garage and grab that old circular saw with none of this stuff on it and still know how to handle that, right? So yeah, so it's a balancing act right there. All right, so let's see. Then there's the Bosch Biturbo system, which uses dual motors for maximum power in compact form, or Hilti's Neuron platform, a 22-volt system that essentially um, is, has so many advancements in it. It basically, it's to them, what they're saying is the epitome of what a smart tool is. Okay, whatever. All right. So as far as safety features, it says they're making a lot of strides in that area as well. So they have kickback controls. I know some of the tools have, like I said, they're able to stop, like I said, kickback, which is a very dangerous thing. I demonstrated that in a previous video. What kickback is, it's when say you're pushing a saw through something and it binds, right? And it can actually kick back so hard that it could actually break someone's wrist, right? It sends a lot of people to the hospital, by the way, on the real. So these tools, these smart tools, can stop that, which obviously that's going to stop injuries, which is going to be great for the contractor or for the company, not having to deal with all that, low insurance premiums and all that. So it's all connected there. All right. So what about hand tools, guys? And I'm gonna wrap this up in a minute. But it says, let's see here. The most dramatic example of how hand tools have become smart is the torque wrench. It says traditional torque wrenches were mechanical. You set a value. By the way, I did a video on how to use a torque wrench. Go look in the catalog. You'll see it there. So you set a value on it. All right. And then you hear a click once you hit that value. Once you're torquing, you hear a click, and then boom, that's where you stop, right? But it says on a busy assembly line or a critical, say, installation, close enough isn't acceptable. It says improper torque is one of the leading causes of equipment failure and industrial accidents. So imagine, you're torquing something down on one of these industrial machines. I don't know if they use torque wrenches on airplanes. Okay. But that sentence just kind of scared me right there. It's like, okay, you got an airplane mechanic using a torque wrench to torque something down, and they're just getting close enough torques, not with the exact torques they need, right, to specs, right? I would hope it would be to specs, because you're talking about people's lives in the balance right there. So now they have smart torque wrenches. It says companies like Norbar, Atlas Copco, Ghidorah make digital torque wrenches with Bluetooth connectivity. They measure torque in real time. They log every single fastening event with a timestamp and sync that data to quality management software. In an automotive plant, just like I was saying, right? An automotive plant or aircraft maintenance bay, that means traceability. You know exactly which bolt was tightened, by whom, at what torque, at what time. That's the difference between a recall and a certification. Now, that's where tech is shining brightly, right? So you just can't, if you're an airplane mechanic or you're in a plant somewhere in the Ford plant somewhere, and you're using torque wrenches to get those tolerances in, and you're just, you're not doing it like you should, they're going to be able to trace you if they're using these smart torque wrenches with the digital data screens or whatever, recording the data digitally. They're going to be able to trace you where you were and when, and it's going to all fall on you. So that's a hell of a way of keeping eyes on the workers. But that's one thing I would approve, because once again, you're talking about people's lives at stake. Okay. Snap-on. Anybody sees the Snap-on trucks running around? It says they have digital torque adapters that turn any ratchet into a smart tool. Stanley and Milwaukee have entered that space too. So, all the big boys, right? Big boys and girls are, they see what each other's doing, and they're going to jump in the fray, right? They're not going to get passed up. That's just capitalism. That's just business. Then there are smart levels. You know, the levels, a regular level, bubble level. Okay, it says Stabila and Milwaukee both make digital levels with Bluetooth, and they can connect to apps, give you angle readings to a tenth of a degree, and can be used remotely. So one person can level a surface while another reads the measurement across the room. All right. Smart measuring tools have gone further. Still, Bosch has a laser distance measure. I have one of those as well, a laser measurer. It's crazy how that stuff works. You just point it and you see the red dot, and it'll tell you from how far that dot that you are from the surface on the digital screen. That's just crazy how that works. They also calculate area and volume. They store measurements. It can be exported to your phone and even overlay the measurements into a room scan using augmented reality. That's another type of tech people are sleeping on, augmented reality, okay? Augmented reality it's not like you're like wearing you're immersed in a digital environment completely. No, it's like, you know, picture like digital renderings overlaid on your 3D reality. Like I can be looking at a wall or something or anywhere in your 3D world, and you'll see these overlays of these measurements or whatever. And that's so they're integrating augmented reality into all of this stuff. Okay. A task that used to take a crew and a tape measure now takes only one person in 30 seconds. Yep, that's where we're at. Reminds me of what we're dealing with now, AI, right? Even screwdrivers are getting upgrades. Screwdrivers, guys, one of the most basic of tools, of hand tools, a screwdriver. So precision torque screwdrivers for electronics, increasingly used in medical device manufacturing and device repair, now come with digital torque control to prevent damage to delicate components. Makes a whole lot of sense, right? So, yeah, because if you're dealing with that medical stuff, you got to be very careful. So, you know, you're screwing something in, and when you're making it or manufacturing it, and those screws have to be only so tight. If they're not, they can damage the component. So now you can tell, right, how far you got to go. How were they doing it before without this stuff, though? I mean, makes you ask, right? Makes you ask. So who's driving all this and why now? Okay, why now? Let's see here. 3 groups are pushing this revolution at the same time. Tool manufacturers that are competing for the platform dominance, professional tradespeople demanding more for their gear, and consumers. That's DIYers, homeowners, me and you, who have access to professional grade tools for the first time in history. So that's everybody. We're all driving this, right? We all want the smart stuff. We want because we're fascinated. You can tell, the egotistical people say, look what I got. Tell their neighbor, hey, look at this smart tool. Like, so, everybody's trying to compete with each other on some level, whether it's a business or whether it's just some ego stuff. It says on the manufacturer side, the platform wars are real. Milwaukee, DeWalt, Makita are not just selling tools, they're selling ecosystems. Once a contractor invests in 20 tools on one battery platform, they're locked in, and the brands know it. Okay, so that's what I was telling you guys earlier. Okay, that's why batteries, I think, out of everything we discussed, batteries are the most advanced, right? Because once again, they're the brain, but they're also, like I said, strategically, they lock you in because of the hundreds of tools you may have in your brand. You need that battery platform. Okay, you need that battery platform, or else it won't work. So that's the incentive there. Okay, so let's see. On the professional side, labor costs are the biggest driver. Let's talk about that. Skilled tradespeople are expensive and in short supply across the board. We talk about that all the time here. Electricians, plumbers, framers, welders, smart tools that make one worker more productive are worth a premium. A connected tool system that prevents errors, tracks inventory, reduces having to rework the project, pays for itself fast on a commercial job site. On the consumer side, YouTube, Reddit, social media have created an entire generation of serious DIYers who demand real performance. They're not just buying toy tools. They want what the pros use. and the industry has responded by making pro grade smart tools available at every price point. I think one of my previous videos, I broke down the different tiers of tools, right? That they have. They have what they call the professional grade tools. Then they have what they call the prosumer. You know, professional grade is like for tradespeople, right? They use tools in day in and day out. Then they have the prosumer, which are almost like professional tools, tool grade, quality wise, power wise, but they're for the consumer who's not a tradesman, but you know, they want the regular tools that are more on that level. And then on the lowest level, you have the budget tools, right? That are not as powerful and everything, but you know, you may use them every now and then. So they have the different grades. They break them down. Ryobi would be considered a budget tool compared to like a Fest tool or a even Milwaukee or something like that. Okay. All right. So yeah, those are the drivers of this smart tool revolution. Everybody's in it for something. Okay. So where's all this going? Where's all this headed? Where is all this headed? It says the next frontier is AI integration, right? It says we're already starting to see tools that use machine learning to optimize their performance. Okay, so they can adjust the motor speed, they can adjust the torque, like we talked about, and they can do all this on the fly, man. Like, just think for themselves, right? Imagine that. So you got mini robots. These tools are becoming. Okay. So let's see here. Imagine a circular saw that recognizes hardwood versus softwood and adjusts automatically, or a drill that detects how close you are to the edge of that stud. I mean, how great would that be, right? Or a drill that slows down before something blows out or overheats. Okay, a grinder that monitors vibration patterns and warns you when the disc is close to failure. All right, all these tools, they have sensors and they have brains in the batteries and ancillary microprocessors in the tools themselves. Like I said, working symbiotically to create this type of device that can do all of these things. All right, so if this isn't the definition of smart tools that I explained in this live, I don't know what else to tell you. You can do your own research on that if you need more convincing. But I think I did a decent job of convincing you guys what a smart tool is and what's going on out there, and how this technology is advancing as we speak. All right, battery technology continues to advance, and I think the end goal is like solid state batteries. Okay, they're longer lasting than lithium ions. They're faster charging, and so they're coming down the pike. Solid state batteries. So look for that. And let me see here. All right, guys. So that's pretty much it. Hope you guys got something out of that, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.